In January 1982, the president of Yamaha Motor stood in front of his shareholders in Hamamatsu, Japan, and said something that would trigger one of the worst crises in the company's history. He told them Yamaha would overtake Honda as the world's #1 motorcycle manufacturer within 2 years. Honda's president, Kiyoshi Kawashima, heard about it, and his response became one of the most famous lines in Japanese corporate history: Yamaha wo tsubusu. We will crush Yamaha. 18 months later, Yamaha was sitting on close to 1 million unsold motorcycles in warehouses across Japan and the United States, drowning in debts approaching $1 billion, and its president was forced to resign in disgrace. But to understand how a piano company ended up in a motorcycle war it couldn't possibly win, we need to go back about 100 years, to a broken organ in a small Japanese town and a man too stubborn to quit. Torakusu Yamaha had struggled to find a stable path early in life. Born in 1851 as the third son of a low-ranking samurai in Wakayama, Japan, he had tried watchmaking. That business collapsed for lack of capital. He bounced between repairing medical equipment and driving rickshaws for a hospital director. By the time he arrived in the small coastal town of Hamamatsu in 1886, he was 35 years old and going absolutely nowhere. Then a local elementary school called Jinju Elementary asked him to repair their prized American-made Mason and Hamlin Reed organ. Nobody else in Hamamatsu could do it. Torakusu opened it up and found the problem was almost comically simple, just 2 broken springs. But while he was inside the organ, he did something nobody asked him to do. He blueprinted the entire internal mechanism, every gear, every reed, every spring. And then he decided he was going to build his own organ from scratch. 2 months later, he had one. Japan's first domestically made reed organ. Now he needed approval from the music experts at Tokyo's Music Institute. Small problem though, Tokyo was 250 kilometers away over the rugged Hakone Mountains, and Torakusu did not have money for a cart. According to Yamaha's own company history, he strapped the organ to a carrying pole, slung it over his shoulder, and walked 250 kilometers through mountain passes with a keyboard instrument on his back. The professors at the Music Institute listened to it and said no. The tuning was terrible. Torakusu was an engineer, not a musician. And honestly, that is where most people would have quit. Torakusu enrolled in a month of music theory lectures in Tokyo, walked 250 kilometers back to Hamamatsu, built a second organ in 2 months, then walked 250 kilometers back to Tokyo again. That is 4 mountain crossings with a musical instrument. The man was absolutely relentless. This time, the Tokyo professors declared his instrument was as good as anything imported from abroad. He received an order for 7 organs and permission to launch his company. By 1897, his operation was incorporated as Nippon Gaki Company Limited, and it became Japan's first manufacturer of Western musical instruments. The company logo was 3 tuning forks, born directly from Torakusu's painful experience learning to tune that first rejected organ. He went on to produce Japan's first upright piano in 1900 and its first grand piano in 1902. He won an honorary prize at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. When Torakusu Yamaha died in 1916, he had built Japan's premier instrument company from 2 broken springs and pure stubbornness. But the really wild part of Yamaha's story had not even started yet. Everything that came next, the motorcycles, the rivalry with Honda, the war that nearly destroyed the company, all grew out of what Yamaha learned during its next chapter. During World War II, Nippon Gaki stopped making musical instruments entirely and started manufacturing propellers for Japanese Zero fighter planes, along with fuel tanks and wing components. By 1944, the Hamamatsu factory was producing 1,300 propellers per month, with 10,000 workers running day and night shifts. According to company records, Nippon Gaki was responsible for a significant share of Japan's total wartime propeller production. And here is where this story gets truly ridiculous. You know who was helping supply technology for all of that? Honda. Yes, that Honda. Honda supplied high-speed machining technology used in Nippon Gaki's wartime production facilities. They were literally helping build the company that would one day become their greatest rival in the motorcycle industry. American bombing raids destroyed all but one of Nippon Gaki's factories in Hamamatsu. But the wartime experience with metallurgy and precision manufacturing turned out to be invaluable for what came next. Casting iron frames for grand pianos requires insane precision. Those piano frames have to withstand over 20 tons of string tension while maintaining acoustic properties. That expertise in precision casting and metallurgy later proved invaluable for building motorcycle engines. The man who connected those dots was Genichi Kawakami, who became Nippon Gaki's fourth president in 1950 at age 38. They called him the Emperor of Yamaha. Kawakami looked at his piano factory and saw a motorcycle company hiding inside it. In November 1953, Kawakami issued a highly confidential directive inside the Nippon Gaki headquarters to begin building a prototype motorcycle engine. At the time, roughly 200 companies were competing in Japan's crowded motorcycle market. Entering this space was borderline insane, but Kawakami personally helped assemble engines and joined a 10,000-kilometer durability test on public roads across Japan. The result was the YA-1, a 125 cubic centimeter single-cylinder motorcycle nicknamed the Akatombo, the Red Dragonfly, for its distinctive cream and reddish-brown color scheme. The styling came from art students at the same Tokyo University that had once rejected Torakusu's organ. Only 125 units were built in the first year. The YA-1 swept first, second, and third place at the 1955 All-Japan Autobike Endurance Road Race. On July 1, 1955, the motorcycle division was spun off as Yamaha Motor Company Limited, with Kawakami serving as president of both companies. Under Kawakami's leadership over the following decades, Yamaha became staggeringly diversified. His revolutionary kiln drying technique cut piano production time from 2 years down to 3 months, making Nippon Gaki the world's largest piano manufacturer by 1966 at 100,000 units a year. Meanwhile, Yamaha Motor grew into Japan's second-largest motorcycle maker. They expanded into boats, becoming Japan's largest fiber-reinforced plastic boat producer. They made audio equipment, archery bows that won 6 Olympic gold medals, snowmobiles, golf carts, and even built the engine for the legendary Toyota 2000 GT sports car. A piano company from Hamamatsu was now making everything from concert grand pianos to racing engines. But being number 2 in motorcycles wasn't enough for everyone at Yamaha headquarters. And that's where the story takes a very dark turn. For decades, Yamaha had been chasing Honda in the motorcycle market. Now, for the first time, it looked like they might actually catch them. By the late 1970s, Yamaha Motor's president Hisao Koike was sick of playing eternal second fiddle to Honda in the Japanese motorcycle market. And he had spotted what he thought was a critical vulnerability in Honda's strategy. Honda was pouring its best engineers and biggest investments into its booming automobile division. New car plants were going up in Ohio. New models were rolling off the line. The motorcycle division was, arguably, getting less attention from Honda's leadership. And the market share numbers backed Koike up. Honda's domestic motorcycle market share had declined from a peak of around 65% in the mid-1960s to roughly 38% by 1981. Yamaha had been steadily climbing from 30% in 1976 to over 36% by the end of 1981. The gap between the two companies had narrowed to just 3 percentage points. In model count, they were practically tied. Honda offered 63 models, Yamaha offered 60. But beneath those numbers, the two companies were operating very differently. Koike smelled blood anyway. In August 1981, Yamaha announced plans to build a massive new motorcycle factory with production capacity of 1 million units per year. When completed, Yamaha's total capacity would actually exceed Honda's by roughly 200,000 units. Then came the moment that sealed Yamaha's fate. At a shareholders' meeting in January 1982, Koike crossed the line with a public declaration that would haunt the company for decades. He told the room that within 1 year, Yamaha would be the domestic market leader, and within 2 years, the world's #1 motorcycle maker. It was public trash talk against Honda in Japan, where this kind of corporate provocation just isn't done. But Koike apparently never checked the numbers underneath the surface. Yamaha spent roughly 1% of sales on research and development. Honda spent approximately 5%. Yamaha's debt-to-equity ratio was a precarious 3-to-1. Honda's was less than 1-to-1. Honda had massive automobile profits from its car division that could be redirected to any fight it chose. Yamaha was a motorcycle-focused company betting everything on a single gamble with borrowed money. Koike had poked a sleeping giant. That giant was about to wake up very, very angry. Honda's president Kiyoshi Kawashima had actually warned everyone as early as 1978 that he would never give up the #1 position to anyone. But Koike's public declaration in January 1982 transformed a simmering corporate tension into total war. Kawashima's response echoed through Honda's Tokyo headquarters and became one of the most famous battle cries in Japanese business history. Yamaha wo tsubusu, we will crush Yamaha. Another Honda executive framed it even more colorfully. Yamaha has not only stepped on the tail of a tiger, it has ground it into the earth. Honda's counterattack wasn't some clumsy brute force response. It was a sophisticated, multi-dimensional offensive. Honda had developed a revolutionary computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing technology system that allowed small batch, multi-model production on a single assembly line. This system dramatically shortened the cycle time from design concept to dealer showroom floor. Honda began shifting engineers and resources from its automobile division back to motorcycles and unleashed the most intense product blitz in manufacturing history. Over the next 18 months, Honda introduced or updated over 80 motorcycle models and discontinued more than 30 others. That's over 100 total product changes. Yamaha managed just 34 new models and 3 discontinuations, only 37 changes total. Honda was making roughly 3 product moves for every single one of Yamaha's. At peak intensity in 1982, Honda was releasing new or refreshed motorcycles at a pace approaching 1 model every single week. Think about what that does to a customer walking into a motorcycle dealership in Tokyo or Osaka. On one side, rows of gleaming, brand new Honda motorcycles with the latest designs and technology. On the other side, Yamaha bikes that suddenly looked dated, stale, and old-fashioned. Honda had weaponized fashion in the motorcycle industry, turning bike design into a rapid style cycle, and Yamaha simply could not keep up. But Honda wasn't done. They simultaneously launched a ferocious price war across the Japanese motorcycle market. Retail prices on popular models plummeted by more than 30%. The most popular 50 cubic centimeters Honda scooter in Japan was selling for less than a 10-speed bicycle at around 27,500 yen. And despite these near giveaway prices, Honda guaranteed its motorcycle dealers 10% higher profit margins than anything Yamaha could offer, a strategy Yamaha simply could not match financially since all of it was subsidized by the enormous profits flowing in from Honda's automobile division. Yamaha had no equivalent financial cushion, no car division, no backup revenue stream. It was fighting a one-front war against an opponent with effectively unlimited resources. But Honda's offensive only landed so hard because Yamaha had already put itself in an incredibly vulnerable position. The company had overproduced, taken on significant debt to fund its new factory, and bet heavily on continued growth in a market that was about to turn against them. Honda lit the match, but Yamaha had spent the previous year soaking itself in gasoline. The collapse came with sickening speed. At Yamaha's 1981 annual dealer meeting in Southern California, thousands of excited dealers had placed preliminary orders for 280,000 machines, the most in company history. Back at Yamaha's Hamamatsu headquarters, Koike cranked motorcycle production to maximum capacity. He did not notice, or did not want to notice, that this was the absolute peak. The American economy was sliding into recession, and Honda's war machine was about to hit full force. Then the cancellations started rolling in from Yamaha's American distributor. A few at first, then hundreds, then thousands. Rumored cancellations from the United States alone reached 90,000 motorcycles. Combined with Honda's relentless model blitz and price war back in the Japanese domestic market, Yamaha's motorcycle sales dropped by more than 50%. The unsold inventory became a catastrophe of historic proportions. 500,000 unsold motorcycles sat in warehouses across Japan. 390,000 unsold units were piled up in storage facilities across the United States. Another 110,000 gathered dust in other overseas markets. Close to 1 million unsold Yamaha motorcycles were sitting across global markets. At the company's reduced sales pace, that backlog represented an entire year's worth of sales just gathering dust. The financial devastation matched the inventory disaster. Yamaha Motor's consolidated debts reached 280 billion yen, roughly $1.1 billion. The debt-to-equity ratio exploded from 3-to-1 up to 7-to-1. Yamaha posted 2 consecutive years of losses totaling over $126 million. They cut shareholder dividends by 80% and announced 700 immediate job cuts, with more layoffs coming. Yamaha Motor's own official corporate history describes this period as a matter of corporate life and death. The company was facing a financial crisis that threatened its very existence. The market share swing told the whole story. In just 18 months, Honda's share of the Japanese domestic motorcycle market went from 38% up to 47%. Yamaha collapsed from 37% down to 27%. A 20-point swing, from near parity to total humiliation. In January 1983, barely 1 year after his triumphant declaration, Hisao Koike was forced to resign from Yamaha Motor following the crisis. He acknowledged publicly that Yamaha could never compete with Honda in product development or sales. He pledged to end the war and accept Yamaha's position as the #2 motorcycle company. His successor, Hideto Eguchi, made the formal concession even more explicit during a press conference in Hamamatsu. He publicly stated it was Yamaha's fault, that they could not match Honda's strength, and that any future competition would be based on mutual recognition of their respective market positions. Multiple business analysts have described this moment as a virtual public surrender, something almost unprecedented in Japanese corporate culture. Junichi Kawakami himself, the emperor of Yamaha, who had backed Koike's gamble from the beginning, surveyed the wreckage of the company he had spent decades building, and reportedly said that they had plunged like a diving jet, and that his ignorance was to blame. The restructuring that followed was savage. 3,500 Yamaha employees were laid off. Motorcycle production capacity was cut in half, from 3 million units down to 1.5 million. Yamaha's main banks extended an emergency 100 billion yen lifeline, roughly $417 million, just to keep the company alive. Yamaha and its financial partners worked urgently to clear excess inventory, dumping large numbers of motorcycles into overseas markets at heavily discounted prices. Sumitomo Bank in Tokyo reached out to Ford Motor Company in Detroit to help Yamaha's American distributor move hundreds of thousands of warehoused machines. The unlikely connection was that Yamaha built the engine for Ford's Taurus SHO sedan. But here is the thing about nearly dying as a corporation. Sometimes it is exactly what saves you. The pre-war Yamaha was dangerously concentrated in a single product line with unsustainable debt. The post-war Yamaha was forced to diversify or disappear. Under Eguchi's leadership, Yamaha Motor expanded aggressively into marine products, power equipment, industrial robotics, all-terrain vehicles, and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. They stopped trying to be #1 in total motorcycle volume and instead pursued excellence in specific niches where they could dominate. And in one of the great ironies of business history, the company that benefited most from Yamaha's catastrophic implosion was not even Japanese. It was Harley-Davidson in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. With close to 1 million discounted Yamaha motorcycles flooding the American market at bargain basement prices, some American buyers turned back toward domestic brands. That backlash, combined with President Reagan's 45% tariff on imported Japanese motorcycles over 700 cubic centimeters signed in April 1983, helped give Harley-Davidson breathing room alongside its own internal restructuring and the new Evolution engine. Even Honda took a long, hard look at the experience and winced. Honda's own official corporate history acknowledges that during the war with Yamaha, the company lost sight of customer satisfaction and competed purely for market share. Honda admitted to losing what they call the 3 joys: the joy of buying, the joy of selling, and the joy of creating. Today, Yamaha Motor's global headquarters in Iwata, Japan, oversees a corporation generating 2.5 trillion yen in annual revenue, about $17 billion, selling 4.8 million motorcycles every year across 137 subsidiaries worldwide. They are still the world's second largest motorcycle manufacturer, and they are the global leader in personal water vehicle sales. Yamaha Corporation, the music parent company headquartered nearby in Hamamatsu, generates 462 billion yen, and it is the world's largest musical instrument manufacturer. This includes concert grand pianos, professional audio systems, the DX7 digital synthesizer, and even the Vocaloid technology behind virtual pop star Hatsune Miku. The two companies are now separate, publicly traded entities sharing the tuning fork logo under a joint brand agreement, though with one subtle difference. Yamaha Corporation's logo is purple with the tuning forks contained inside the circle. Yamaha Motor's logo is red with the tuning forks extending beyond it. The Honda-Yamaha war is taught at Harvard Business School. It is analyzed in George Stock Jr.'s landmark book, Competing Against Time, and in Chet Richards' Certain to Win, which applies military strategist John Boyd's decision cycle framework to Honda's rapid product moves. And the lesson everyone pulls from this story is pretty straightforward. Do not publicly challenge a giant unless you have actually checked how big they really are. Honda's decisive weapon was not a bigger factory in Hamamatsu, it was speed. Honda made over 100 product changes, compared to Yamaha's 37. Honda got inside Yamaha's decision cycle and kept punching before Yamaha could figure out what hit them. But maybe the deeper lesson from Yamaha's story is this. The company started with a man who carried an organ on his back across the Hakone Mountains twice because a group of professors in Tokyo told him it was not good enough. That same stubbornness nearly killed the company 90 years later when Koike refused to back down from Honda. And that same stubbornness is exactly what brought Yamaha back from the brink. If this story blew your mind, you're going to want to see the video on screen right now. I'll see you in the next one.